Welcome back to the Mama Genius Hub podcast. I'm so excited for our next guest, a guest with superpowers who is going to dive into using how do we get through trauma. And her journey started as she was a young mom. And so let's dive straight into that. Welcome to the Mama Genius Hub podcast, where we support moms with big dreams from entrepreneurship to personal aspirations. I'm your host, Michelle DeKaiser, and I'm here to help you unlock your potential in all areas of life. Join us as we explore strategies for thriving in motherhood while pursuing the dreams, the key to actually unlocking your genius. Subscribe now and embark on a journey to realize your fullest potential. And Hince is an inner explorer, author, public speaker, and spiritual teacher. She shares stories of how she shifted her skull bones and grew 3/4 of an inch as a result of her search for inner peace. Really getting into that inner sensor, right? And she wants you to know what she's done and that you can do it too. I'm so excited to bring Anne to the stage. Welcome to the podcast, Anne. So wonderful to have you today.
Thanks, Michelle. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to hear I have to give the background is like, when we get into a new system and all the tech stuff that comes onto it, but what we did right before once we released all that, we just took some deep breaths together because it really is getting back into that center and really, really putting yourself forward. And so thank you for joining me in that today. And thank you for joining me here. But I'd like to jump right in. Tell us your story. Tell us that why behind that. We have to hear it.
Okay. I realized I should have said that I wasn't exactly a young mum. I was a mum of young kids at the time.
That's what I meant. And I think it came out wrong. You're right. That's actually what I meant to say.
Yeah, because I wasn't a young mum. It took me a long time to have kids. But I was a very stressed out mum. I was afraid all the time of doing the wrong thing, and just so much was going on. So much goes on in our day-to-day life when we're a mother of young children. And I was just stressed out all the time. And I didn't think I could continue that way. So I knew I had to change. And another part of that story is that when I was 9, we lived in Hong Kong, and I was sent to a boys' boarding school in England. So the first year, I was the only girl boarder there. There were some day girls that would go home after lessons, but I stayed there. And I was teased mercilessly by these boys in the age range 9 through 13. So I realized that I was scared of boys in that age range. And guess what kids I had? I had 2 boys. And they were getting older. And I knew I had to do something before they got to that age range because I didn't want to be afraid of my kids. So my journey actually started after I had a business altercation with 2 other mothers at my boys' school. And those mothers were not like me. They were self-confident, self-assured, authority type women. And they told me I'd done something wrong. And my mind just spun out of control. It just went over and over the same thing over and over for 3 days. And it was at the end of that time frame that I realized, first, this was not normal. I didn't know anyone else who would react that way. But also, I realized it was a little bit like how I would react when my dad would tell me I'd done something wrong. So that was the first time I realized how much, well, I didn't realize how much at that point. I realized over time how much. But our childhood is still affecting us to this day if we haven't dealt with it. And I was determined to change. So I found a technique that worked for me, and I started using it every day to bring myself back to peace. And I found that my life at home, my family life, also became more peaceful as I became peaceful. So that was that's the start of the journey. We can talk more about it, but that was the start of the journey.
Sorry, just taking one last note because, I'm always the note taker in this group. But I love that how you said like that you brought more peace, right? Like to come into it and to realize that it was self. And I love how you talked about the awareness. I want to bring that back because sometimes we're not necessarily aware to what are the things that are affecting us in our past. And you brought up 2 different situations. You brought up the one of being scolded by these women who then like reminded you of your parents. And I want any of those listening right now to say, has that happened to them where all of a sudden you like feel like the person in front of you was a parent or someone else, and how you would react was that childlike feeling rather than you in that moment of who the adult that you were in the room. And the second one was now your boys are getting to that age range that you were afraid of. And how many of us have felt, I feel like part of that also comes into play of what society tells us, like, oh, the teens are the terrible, or the terrible twos, or this or that age range is something to fear in that. So I feel like that comes duality into your own life from your personal experience, but also like just that aspect of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now that they're this age? And I feel like we put those preconceived notions in our heads as moms. And I'm just going to throw that out to you because I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
We do. We're programmed. We're programmed by our parents, our caregivers, right? And so we tend to take on that programming, but we're also programmed by society. So like you were saying, the terrible twos. So we have those expectations. Part of my journey using this technique eventually got to the place where the thoughts that I used to have in my mind, so I was very self-critical, judgmental, and I hated being that way, but those thoughts were there. And I would use this technique. It was called EFT. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's tapping. I would tap on the thoughts that would come to mind, those self-critical thoughts. And eventually they stopped coming. They stopped coming to my mind. And I realized that they had been my dad's words that I had taken on as my own and replayed over and over again. And it was really nice when said gone, right? Because they went there. But that just shows the programming. It's just programmed into our subconscious mind. That's why we end up doing things that our parents did, and we don't necessarily want to be doing them, right? That something like stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. My dad used to use that with us. And when I was in those early days, I could sometimes feel that thought coming to mind, right? And if I hadn't been as aware, I might have said it. And I think a lot of us do that. We just say it over, and then we program our children with that phrase, and then they do it. So that's just how that programming just goes through the generation after generation. So to stop it, we have to become aware of it first, and then we can do something about it. Then we could do something like tap with EFT to actually release it. So I never said that phrase to my kids. So that's really nice.
Well, that's so true though. When you think about that, and all of a sudden you can feel your, like, all of a sudden, like, where did that just come from? Or like, why did I just say that? Or all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I just turned into my mom. I just turned into my dad. Whatever it is, or that former teacher of yours that yelled at you, or whoever put that into your body or system, like, and then it just keeps getting replayed as you do. But I love how you say the first step is to make a stop to it, is to become aware of it. And so what are some ways that, I mean, I just kind of gave some ideas of like different feelings that might come up as you're aware, but sometimes the awareness is hard to even like realize that you're doing it. And so let's touch on that in just a moment. Attention mompreneurs. Do you feel like you're constantly juggling the responsibilities without a moment to yourself? It's time to pause and reflect with our Mama Genius quiz. Tailored for busy mamas like you, this quiz will help you identify what's blocking your path and inspire you to harness your unique strengths, transform how you manage life and business, find your rhythm, and ignite your joy. Visit mamageniushub.com today to discover your Mama Genius. And that's mamageniushub.com. All right, so let's dive straight into that, really just recognizing and becoming aware. What are some ideas of that you have for us to start just right there?
Right, because most of it is stored in our subconscious mind. So we're just not aware of it. And that's why the programming continues on. So the way I did it was I would ask myself during the day, how am I feeling right now? Just multiple times a day, I would stop and ask myself, how am I feeling right now? And then I would also ask myself, and do I want to feel this way again? Because I realized that I needed to change it. If I really wanted to change my future, I had to change who I was right now. So I would pretty much always answer no. I don't want to feel this way again. So then I would tap and I would bring myself back to peace. So the tapping involves actually being totally truthful in how you're feeling in the moment. And we tend to suppress or bypass the feelings or our truth because we don't think we should be thinking that way. We don't think we should be feeling that way. But the tapping taps into our actual truth, and it releases the energy around it. So if I'm feeling really frustrated with someone, a child for not picking up toys, for example, I would tap on my frustration, right? I'm really, really frustrated that they're not doing what I want them to do. That frustration lives inside of me. So if I can let that frustration go and be at peace with them picking up a toy or not picking up a toy, it becomes much easier to ask them to pick up a toy because there's no energy inside of me left, right? So they're not resisting anything inside of me. You know, kids will often pick up on how you're feeling and they will push back against it. But if you can let the energy go and just come from a place of peace, then things change.
I'm just taking that in because it's so true. I never really thought of it that way in terms of the release of that frustration. They have nothing to tug on anymore. They have nothing to, like, you always say, like, your kids are pushing your buttons or you're pushing your kids' buttons or something, but they're only pushing it because the energy is there. But if there's nothing to push, they can't push the button.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And that's how I became more peaceful, because they weren't able to trigger me the way they used to. You know, I would say I had PTSD from my dad's drinking and his anger. So I was very reactionary, and it didn't make home life pleasant. But as I worked through these triggers, you know, when I was triggered, I would tap. And eventually, when you do that, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times to the same trigger, you don't get triggered anymore. And it's kind of strange for kids and you know, spouses to walk through that with you, because you know, they think you're going to be triggered, but you're not. And then there's like, whoa, what happened? I've got a different mom.
So I've actually never seen tapping on the back of the head like you've done before, and I've done EFT, and I've done EFT with different practitioners before. But what I want to do is I want to just take a practical moment, take a pause for a second. And so, for instance, say you gave a scenario of being frustrated by your child who's not picking up toys, right? So in that moment, the child just decided not to pick up the toy. You're in that moment. What are the first physical steps you do? And if you could talk it out as well, since, you know, some will be seeing visually, some will be listening. What is the first thing? Like, okay, you're in this frustration mode. The kid's in front of you, pushing every single button they have on you right now. Like, what would a mom do in that moment?
Okay, well, it's going to be slightly different based on the age of the child, right? If the child's young and doesn't mind you looking a little strange, because EFT does look a little strange, then you would do it right there and then. And the first thing you do is tap on the karate chop point on the side of your hand, and you'd say whatever your truth is right then. It's like, oh my goodness, I am so frustrated. And you could say this in your mind. It's more powerful if you say it out loud, but you could just say it in your mind. I'm so frustrated that they're not picking up their toys right now, and I need them picked up. And that's my truth right now. And it's okay that I'm feeling frustrated, because what we're wanting to do is acknowledge and feel and allow that feeling to be. Once it's been given enough attention, it will release. It's when we try and push it down or push it aside that the energy actually stays there. So we're totally finding our truth. And then the next point is the crown point on the top of the head. And just say something short like, I'm so frustrated. And then the beginning of the eyebrow, I'm so frustrated. And then the bone on the edge of the eye, I'm so frustrated. And then on the upper lip, under the nose, I'm so frustrated. On the chin, I'm so frustrated. On the collarbone, I'm so frustrated. And then under the arm where the brow strap goes across, if you have one, I'm so frustrated. And then you take a deep breath, you let it out. And that's one round of EFT. It's very simple. And I think that's sometimes why people don't use it as much, because, you know, that can't do enough. That can't do much, can it? Right? It's not, excuse me. It just looks too easy to be that powerful. But when we're finding the negative, which is what we're doing most of the time, it's the negative that's stored in the body as tension. We find the negative and we use our own words to describe it. And we do it multiple times. It is so powerful.
I love that so much. And actually, you're reinvigorating me to do this more often as well, because it's so true. Like sometimes the breathing techniques or things you're like, oh, I don't need that right now. And sometimes that's even my first reaction. It's like, oh, I don't really, I'm okay. Like, I don't need that. And I was actually there was a showing of the movie in our right minds yesterday, and so we watched the movie in a Zoom room together, and then there was a circle part afterwards to share your thoughts with it. And there was another woman on there who was, I believe she was in her 70s somewhere. I can't remember the exact age, but she did say it. And she was like, until 9 years ago, I'd been living up here in my mind. My body had been following all my actions of everything that I was doing, but I was not present inside my body. And I think you're bringing out that reminder of how important it is to incorporate that and to release those feelings and to really come back into your body. And yes, it's a simple technique, but it's still something that physically needs to be done. like you can't skip over it.
Right. And that's part of my story, was I was realizing that. And the fact that EFT has a physical component, I think, is really important, because I realized that we hold those memories and those emotions physically in our body. So there needs to be some form of physical component to the technique to allow that energy to release. And as we do it, our subconscious mind opens up and our self-awareness deepens. So that's how eventually I was able to actually get inside my body, to put my awareness inside my body. But it took going through these stages. I couldn't have done one without the other. I had to start releasing those emotions and those memories. And what you were saying a little bit earlier was I used it on a day-to-day basis, right? And things started shifting. But I also realized I wanted more and I wanted it faster. So I actually wrote down all my childhood traumas, all the big T things, the little T things, all those phrases that my dad would say. And I tapped through one each night for an hour to an hour and a half each night. I didn't need it, right? I didn't need to do that because things were getting better. I was more peaceful inside. All of that was happening, but I knew I could do more. So I did all this extra tapping. And that's when things really started to shift faster, because I had let go of all that tension inside of me from all my past traumas.
I want to pause and just have everyone take that in, because I love how you said, and you want it to go faster, and then you found a way to do that, because a lot of times we think like we want things to happen faster, but it still takes the work to do it. And so you made a list, and then you went through each of those tapping every night. So my thought process going through is I'm always about the how to and the practicalness of it. So like, how, I just want to know how was your list like really long, and then and you said it was one each night, so like did it take you months, or like I got to get the details.
That's fine. There were multiple pages, probably 3, 4, 5, don't remember now, but there were a lot of things. And of course, as I kept tapping, more would come to mind, because the subconscious mind is opening up. So when I started this journey, I would say to people, I don't remember much of my childhood, because it was all stored in my subconscious mind. But as I did this work on the things that I did remember, then it opened up and I remembered more of it. So I would take one trauma each night. I might have to do it multiple times. I might come back to it. There might be a different aspect that would come up and I would do it again. But it took many weeks. I don't remember how long, probably a couple of months, I would think, to go through it all. And then after that, I started on collective traumas, things like the Loma Prieta earthquake that I was in, the tsunami, the big things that we all had our own personal experience of. We still store those memories and those emotions inside of us. And I wanted to let those go as well.
So when you say collective trauma, those weren't ones that you were personally involved in, but ones that you like just during your time, or were you actually in the, like, because you mentioned 2 right now, and can you just elaborate on that?
I was actually in the Loma Prieta earthquake. Yes, I was in that one. But the other ones we all experienced through some form of media, right? 9/11, we all watched the videos and we felt the emotions, and we probably didn't process them. We probably kept them inside. So when we see the videos again, there's still some emotion there. So I worked through those as well.
I have to say that I was actually going to NYU at the time. So front and center there.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, you probably have a lot stored inside of you from then.
You're giving me lots of ideas right now. But I love that process. And this is something that people can do and start doing themselves in terms of really seeing what are some of the things they want to unlock, but sorry, I'm a little tongue tied today, but I want to come back to that point where you said, like, I don't remember my childhood, because I feel like that's me a little bit at times too. And I love how you said that, because it is stored, it is there, but this is a way to start unlocking that. So do you feel like you have more clarity in your childhood now and remember some more of the things?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And what I say is, like, kind of the emotions, our current emotions are a portal into our childhood, right? That experience with those women and my mind spinning out of control, that reminded me about my dad and how he would react, or how I would react to him, right? So that took me, those current day emotions took me into that childhood event. So what we do is we tend to replay the emotions that we've replayed before, so the ones we've stuck inside. So we tend to have events happen that bring up those same emotions again, as a way for us to clear them out, but we don't realize that, right? So, but we can use that as a tool. So if I'm going through my day and something triggers me, I can tap on that. And as I tap on it, as we do more and more tapping, the subconscious mind opens up. So when I'm tapping on it, a memory will likely pop into my mind of some time in the past that the same emotion happened, right? And you can use that to go back through your life and just revisit those events that happened with the same emotion, and continue to tap them out, right? Go through those memories and tap through them, and that clears out that trigger.
Wow. We'll be back in just a moment.
Do you ever feel like your own dreams are fading on you as you focus and keep everything together for your family, or been buried under laundry and school runs and endless to-do lists? They're so deep, you don't even know what they are anymore. The Mama Genius Hub is here to help you uncover that part of you again. Maybe you felt that pull to start a passion project, return to a hobby you once loved, or pursue a career that lights you up, but you're so caught in everyone else's needs that you keep slipping through the cracks. In just 15 minutes a day, our mini courses will help you reconnect with those dreams while finding a new rhythm in motherhood's beautiful, messy life. And best of all, you'll be doing it with a community of moms who truly understand the juggle and the joy. The Mama Genius Hub is a community who've been there and are here to support and inspire each other every step of the way. It's time to rediscover your spark, live in your genius, and inspire your kids by showing them how to follow their own passions. Join the Mama Genius Hub today and start creating space for you again without guilt or doing it solo.
Come to www.connectingmamas.com for more details.
And we're back, and I could keep talking to a cover, but we are running out of time. So here's our final question for you. What is a common misconception about motherhood that you think holds back many moms from truly stepping into their own genius?
Probably, well, I mean, mine would have been it's all encompassing, right? That there's no time in the day to do anything else. And for me, it was because I was too stressed out. So if we release that stress and we become more peaceful, we actually see things, opportunities that we hadn't seen before. They were there, but we were just too stressed to in our head, not in our body, to actually notice them. So yeah, that's it.
Well, I love that you brought that up too. And actually, I was going to take it just a step further with the concept of time, and something that I've been trying to work with is time is a construct, and we all have the same amount of 24 hours a day, but it's how you use that time. And that's why I love the word genius, is in terms of when you're in your genius, you're actually getting more done in less minutes, but more productivity, more things like that, that it makes time not feel so much, which I feel the same with the peace. And that when you bring that peace into it, you see those opportunities, and then you get things done faster in time frame. Minutes, right?
Yes.
We count out the seconds. Tell everyone how they can get a hold of you, and if you have a gift for us, and anything you'd like to share.
Sure. You can get a hold of me multiple different ways. I'm very available through my website and Hintz.com. I'm very active on Facebook, so you can contact me there. And I have my YouTube channel, so you can contact me there. One thing we didn't mention was that you could use EFT on kids as well, on babies, and you can use it on anyone, but it's easier with younger children. And if you're interested in finding out more about EFT, I have a free PDF download on my website that is 2 pages, lots of information, all the key points on how to use EFT. And that's available for anyone who wants it there. I've also got a retreat coming up in July of 25 this year for anyone who wants to do this work in person, like really detailed work. It's for women who've lost a parent, so that might not be you, but it might be you, and it will be a way to clear out all that past that lives inside of us from that event.
You just brought up something that I'm going to have to ask a question on because I can't help myself, but you brought up working with children on this. Do you have any, like, just a quick idea of how do you even like approach that conversation with a child to like introduce this? Or it's probably I'm opening a can of worms right now, but I have to know.
Well, again, it depends on the age, right? My son was probably about 8 when I started using it on his nightmares. I would just tap on him. I didn't have to say anything because the emotion was already in his body. And I guess at that point, he'd probably seen me doing it enough to know that it was something that would do something. So I don't really know how you would do that. You know, if you've got a very young child, you just do it. And
do you do it? You said, I was confused. Did you do it for him or you showed him how to do it?
I did it on him. He was lying in bed and I would tap on his points. I've done that on a baby on an airplane where the baby was screaming, and, you know, people hate that on airplanes. And I just gently tapped on his points and he fell asleep in his mother's arms. So it you know, it's very powerful. It's harder with teenagers. You know, I probably, if I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't do it on teenagers unless they were absolutely willing to do it, and my boys weren't.
Well, my teenage son came into mind as we were talking about this. All right, on that note though, we're going to put you behind stage for a moment. We're going to go through some wonderful takeaways. So many takeaways today. So yeah, so many takeaways today, but we're going to start with takeaway number 1 is thinking about that idea of reacting. When she was talking about her childhood, when something goes wrong, that's the first thing that we do is we react. Instead, in family life, we want to become more peaceful with it, but it's first realizing there is that reaction going on, which leads us into number 2. Where did that reaction come from? Well, it came from the programming. It came from the programming by caregivers and or by society, expectations that we have that we're self-critical of ourselves. And so then she leads us into step number 3, which is to first identify. That's what we need to do to stop it, right? To become aware of it, to start asking yourself during the day, how am I feeling right now? And do I want to feel more of this way? And she was saying for her, the answer was no, more often than not. So then that's what leads us into step number 4, which is then starting the tapping process of when you're having that feeling. She gave the example of frustration of your kid leaving the toy right in front of them, right? And you got that frustration. And that's the time to like really lean into it and to be truthful with what you are feeling at that moment. And tapping helps you bring out that truth and identifies the truth of what you're feeling to help release it at that moment. And then that leads us into like, that's opening up the subconscious. And I love how she put takeaway number 5 is that your current emotions are portals into your childhood, right? That's where these things stem from. And so it's really playing that out and figuring out where all of those come from. And I'm going to be working on this too as well, because when you think about that, you have those techniques, not techniques, but those feelings, thoughts in your heads of what was happening, but you don't know where they're coming from. Or for me, it's like, I don't really remember my childhood. I use that a lot and things that are preconceived, but they're there. We have to open up that subconscious, and EFT will give us that chance to do that as well. And just that bonus was that she wrote out that list of what she found, 3 to 5 pages of whatever her childhood trauma she felt, and tapped out to each one of them every night, hour and a half. So things to keep in mind to help you get to your peace and enjoy. Let's bring Anne back for her final takeaway.
Hi. Okay, one thing I love to let people know is there is so much more depth to life than we know, right? Because there is so much stored in our subconscious mind. It's unbelievable the amount of tension we hold inside that we're not aware of. And once you release that, or once you start to release that, you'll see a depth to life that you didn't know was there before. And it's really a fun journey, and I encourage everyone to do it.
Well, on that note, let's encourage each other to do this, and maybe we'll even pull this into the Facebook group as well, and we'll start a tapping group in there as well. Maybe bring Anne in there as well, and we can always talk about for the hub as well. But you know what? It's all about, if this really called to you right now and it was something like pinged right here to you and to your genius to try it, give it a go. Let's do this together. As always, let's do momhood together, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Mama Genius Hub podcast. If you found value in our conversation, please share this episode with another mama who might benefit. Sharing helps us build a supportive community and reach out to more mamas like you. After all, it's more fun when we do motherhood together. Until next time, stay motivated and continue to pursue your dreams as you shine in your genius.